Hey, my ADHD family. Welcome to another episode of ADHD Love Parent Talk, where we talk about all things ADHD. I am Yakini, and today I have another wonderful guest. Her name is Sarah Lacko. Is that right?
Yes, you said right.
So I'm so excited about her being here because I want her to tell a little bit about her story, her daughter's story, her daughter being diagnosed with ADHD, and she is a self-diagnosis. So this is such an important thing because we talk a lot about this in the community where people just know that they have ADHD, but they may not actually have the diagnosis. So I definitely wanted to get her story. So Sarah, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I seriously love what you're doing, and just educating people on ADHD is just such an important thing. So thank you so much for what you do and you offer us.
Well, Sarah, thank you for coming. So tell the audience about you.
Yes, so my name is Sarah Lacko. You did say that right. And I am an entrepreneur. I am a women's empowerment coach. I also do women's retreats. I think it's very important for us as women. We're always busy, always doing all the things. And so I like to kind of take that step back with women and help them, give back to themselves and re-energize. And then that just gives us more energy and more of a ability to be like present in our lives, in our families' lives, and in our children's lives. So I have an inspirational blog as well, Inspired Vita.
Oh, that is so nice. And you're right. That is so important because one thing we don't do well as women is take care of us, right? So I love what you're doing. So let's talk about, we're going to talk about, like I said, two different stories. We're going to talk about your daughter and you. So let's talk about your daughter first. So tell me a little bit about her, and what age was your child diagnosed?
So she's 16 right now. So crazy. But she was diagnosed in third grade.
Okay.
Me and her father had gotten divorced. She was 5. And so she had always been a super, super busy child. Like she just was all over the place all the time. And I only had one, right? And I was just like, I'm exhausted.
I get it.
And yeah, totally. But I had her in counseling since I think she was 6.
Okay.
And I was trying to see if she maybe was just having a hard time because of, the divorce, and, I moved, and, he ended up becoming absent. And so she did a lot of counseling, and not until third grade, her daycare lady sat me down, who was just close to our family, and just a loved human. She just was very knowledgeable, and she sat me down. It was during the summer, and she had Mia the whole summer. That's my daughter's name, Mia. And she sat me down and she was like, Sarah, Mia has ADHD, and you need to bring her in and get seen. And I just I had been on the edge of it, right? But I just was like, no, maybe it's gonna get better, maybe it's just a thing and it's gonna go away. And so soon as she told me that, I was bawling and all the things, because her daycare lady was like, this is stopping her from having connections and relationships with other kids, because she's impulsive and she does things, and the kids get annoyed by it, or she's in their bubble, and so they don't have space, so they're trying to create that space. And it's just sad to see that when your child is such a beautiful human, and they are just going 1,000 miles an hour, where they can't calm down and have that connection, because they're just in that overdrive all the time. So that's
wild.
Right away I went ahead and made the appointment to do the assessment and all this. And so that's when she was diagnosed, third grade.
Wow. And what type was she diagnosed with?
The ADHD, so just hyperactive.
Okay. So let me ask you, once you actually got that diagnosis, I know that was kind of an emotional shock when she first mentioned it, but once she had that diagnosis, how did you feel about it as a parent?
So good, because I think we get strung up in these like labels, right? We think like a label is going to, you know, bring us down or determine who we are as a human, but like literally we have labels about everything, like girls, boys, like there's just a label. You're born with a label, like right off the bat. And so I think we give the whole label thing a little bit too much credit. And so once you do have that, and once, you know, she did have the ADHD, or was diagnosed with it, I should say, then I was better able, I knew what I was up against. I knew what I was dealing with, you know, and when you know what you're working with, then you're able to figure out the knowledge and find out more about it. But I think the worst thing is when you don't know what you're dealing with, and then you're just like, I'm confused, I'm frustrated, I'm upset, this child's not listening to me, like, but then when you know, you're like, okay, well, they're having a hard time listening to me, like they are having a hard time within themselves, right? So how can they have an easy time with me? So it actually was incredibly helpful. And once, you know, she had that diagnosis, and then was able to start, you know, having accommodations, it was so helpful. And I know some people don't medicate for ADHD. I did end up getting her on something, and prior to her not being on a medication and not being diagnosed, she was in reading tutoring, really struggling. Once she took that medication, the first I noticed, and it was like the low dose when they were trying it out, and I saw her like sitting in her chair at the dinner table, and I was like, what is happening?
Yeah.
That child's just sitting like and eating. What's going on, right? But she ended up testing out of reading tutoring and got into the higher, you know, the advanced of reading in 1 month. Just because she was, you know, able to sit and learn. You know, it's really an important thing in school, right? Is to be able to sit and learn, a hard thing, but, you know, it really helped her a lot at that point.
That is absolutely amazing. So how did you get that support to get different accommodations put in place at school? Because I'm assuming it's at school that you got the accommodations put in place.
Yes. So prior to that, before she was diagnosed, we just had a horrible experience, quite frankly. Okay. Teachers weren't working with me. You know, the principal really wasn't, and we were just having to go at it all the time. And it was really unfortunate because, you know, I was a mom wanting the best for her child, but also wanting to work with teachers and the principal, you know, to help this child, because every child counts. And it just got worse. And they talked about segregating her on recess, where they would give her her own corner. And I was like, so she's not going to get to play with other kids? And they're like, no, but we'll give her like a jump rope. And I was like, no, not going to work for me. So I ended up having to, that day I went, and it was just issue after issue. And I went that day and I pulled her out of that school, and it was almost becoming like a sense of bullying to this child who was like 7 or 8. And I went up to the school district and said, you know, she's not going back to this school. We need to find a different school. And that school that we found next was just perfect. The teachers were amazing. And it was so nice to just, as a parent, you know, work with a teacher to help a child, you know, become their best. And, you know, I think that's how it should be, but it's not always the case. So yeah, me working with teachers, her working with teachers, coming up with different things, you know, asking her, you know, will this help, or let's try this, you know, and her daycare lady at the time. So we all collectively, including her, would work up with those different accommodations to help her.
I love that. And one of the things that I like what you're saying is that you weren't afraid to take that chance and leave the school district. And I completely empathize when people can't, but if they do have the opportunity to look into other school systems to get that support that your children need, that's what they should do. Because I had to do the same thing with my son. It
Mm.
got to a point where
Terrible.
they just could not help him. And it was a little bit different with him where they loved him to death, right? They just
good. I'm
could
glad.
not figure
Good.
out how to help him. And actually, ironically, my daughter was going through a similar situation at that time too. And so I ended up having to go to a totally different school district to get that support that they needed. So long story short, the fact that you were willing to say, you know what, I'm going to have to do something different and I'm going to have to change school systems for my daughter to get what she needs. That is so great.
Yeah, it took a lot of different pushes of, well, that's not right. And this isn't right either. And just different things where I finally was at my breaking point. I was like, this is not going to get better. Yeah. And for her to be able to be successful, she cannot be in this environment. It's not helping her. It's not good for me as the parent, always scared to send her to school that I'm going to get a phone call that she's in trouble again. You should feel comfortable and feel as though your child is safe at school. And so when it comes and emotionally safe, right? And so when you don't feel that and as a parent too, it's just you feel this sense of loss of control and you can't help and almost helplessness. So at that point when they had said that was literally just the last straw I had and I was like, no, that's not going to work.
Wow.
Period.
So at home, have you put anything in place since the diagnosis? What have you done differently?
So when she was first diagnosed, we did the wobble seat, my chair was straight broken. It was a strong chair previously, but that thing was about to collapse, right? Because she would just move so much. But what was so important for her was being outside and getting the, exercise. And I got her in soccer and she would do really good in that, just because it's for her, it was really important to get out and move and, get some of that excess energy out. And just trying to talk about things too. Asking her, does this help you better or does this? And the counseling was incredibly helpful as well, because we would all be able to have conversations too,
And this counseling, was it in school or was it out of school?
Out of school. Okay. And I was actually extremely grateful for doing out of school, because she was able to stay with that counselor. I mean, she still sees her to this day, and she's 16 and started when she was 6. Nice. So but as if she had been with someone in school, then changing, that's kind of hard. You have to start over. And also I pulled her when I was having trouble when Mia was in middle school, when they were trying to take her accommodations away. So that counselor actually came to one of those meetings almost as an advocate for Mia, to help to keep those in place. So school counselors are great, but in this instance, for me, it was super helpful to have someone outside of the school district.
I love that. I could talk to you so much about different things, Sarah. This is a great conversation.
Yeah, okay. Completely. Totally.
But anyway, so let's move a little bit. Well, before we do that, what would you say to parents? Some are afraid to get their children assessed, and you had talked about it earlier about the whole label thing, right? And that's one of many reasons. So what would your advice be to them if they're just trying to make that decision?
And I don't even know if you necessarily have to share, that label with anyone, but for you to have that knowledge of, what your child needs and what you need to be doing as a parent and to help your child be successful. I just think it's so important. If it was something else to do with their heart, wouldn't you want to know? If it was something else, as far as another medical issue, wouldn't you want to know? I mean, I would. And this is just, it's the brain, right? It's how the brain is functioning. So it's nothing against them, or, you know, them listening, or, you know, following direction. It's just something, there's a disconnect there. And so you're helping to have that knowledge so you can help make that connection.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, because I mean, that's what I constantly hear. You have two different sides of the story where parents are just deathly afraid to get their child diagnosed. And it's almost like, you know, having ADHD, it's almost like hearing it as if it's a disease, right?
Right. Yeah, totally.
Really, it is. And it's so, in the beginning, it was very frustrating. Now I understand the bigger picture and what's going on, and why people feel this way, and why it's so misunderstood, even though it's well researched. I get it, but it still doesn't make it less frustrating, because to your point, having the diagnosis can open up so many doors for children. And if you choose to, you don't have to choose medication right away. You can try different things. And I think that's the misconception is, oh my God, my child's going to be diagnosed with ADHD and they're going to mention medication. So what? If they do, just say, hey, I want to try some other things before that. Now, to your point, I have two children, both are ADHD. One is on medication and one is not on medication. And that is because that was a very clear choice. Now, as my oldest gets older, and if she's struggling differently or more, then I may consider that down the road. But the point is that is your decision. It's best for what you're, you know, for your child and for your family as a whole. So I love that. Just, yeah, I do love that. So I want to get into your side a little bit, because like I said in the beginning, I think it's important that people, sometimes, you know, when you know, right?
Right.
So tell me, so you also feel you have ADHD. What symptoms do you see?
Girl, I'm so scattered. I really am. I'm so scattered. My child will even have to be like, Mom, and have to remind me on things. I'm like, I'm sorry. My child, thank you for reminding me. Like, you know, so she even tries to help me, you know, with my issues that I have. But yeah, just being scattered, so many ideas, and sometimes just being overwhelmed. I have like these great and amazing ideas, and then I'm just like, I can't do any of them because I want to do all of them at the same time. And yeah, so there's just you know, doing one project, and part of that project means walking into another room, and then guess what, that I'm doing something else in that other room, and I'm not even doing the same project I started with, and I forgot which actual project I started with. Right? So some people might be like, well, I do that and I don't have ADHD. Yeah, you might, or you might not. But yeah, sometimes just being all over the place, scattered. I have lots of energy. People be like, how do you have so much energy? I don't know. I guess it's that. But I'll take it. I've just done different things to try to like help me to, you know, come on down, like take a breath, right? Different smells, tapping into my five senses, you know, working in 20 to 30 minute increments, you know, putting on a timer and saying, I'm only going to work on this for the next 20 to 30 minutes. You know, batching tasks is super helpful, because, you know, you can just then with the ADHD too, you can get hyper focused on something, right? And so, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, you know, as long as you know how to channel it, right? So if you're like, I'm going to get hyper focused in this task, you're like, excellent, I'm going to do this task for the next 30 minutes, and I'm just going to focus on that, you know, and maybe it turns into an hour, but that way it helps to keep you, you know, on one road versus, you know, all over the place.
Having all those tabs open at the same time, like literally.
Yep.
That's why
I'm not going to show you my screen right now.
I was just gonna say the same thing. I'm like, okay, I need to close all of these, or actually I have them hidden, because I will be speaking to you and something will pop up and I'm like, oops.
I know. And you're like, squirrel. Yeah, I'm always blaming the whole squirrel thing.
It is what it is.
But yeah, it's all about like doing different things. Like I put my phone on airplane mode, Because if that dings, then I'm like kind of zoned into that, and I don't even try to be. But yeah, so just doing those different things that to help yourself.
That's too funny.
That is helpful.
So some people may ask,
my computer shuts down, I'm like, okay, good, my computer shut down, and now those tabs are gone, so I don't have to, because I feel like, oh, every single tab I can't close. So when my computer forces it, I'm like, oh, good, got cleaned out. Now let me open them all back again. I'm just kidding. But I'll leave that one not open.
It's like it gives you a choice. Would you like to open the accidentally? Well, you know what I mean? It's like,
yeah, restore or whatever.
Right. Would you like to restore your tabs? Yes. And they're like,
yeah. You're like, was that a great idea? I don't think so.
That is so funny. Oh, that's hilarious. So some people may ask, you know, are you thinking about getting assessed, or do you feel like you're at a point where it's just not necessary at this point?
You know, I kind of go back and forth about it. Sometimes I feel it's not necessary to do it because I've done different things. And, you know, it's not to say, I mean, I still struggle with it, right? And my kid still struggles with it, even if she's medicated or whatnot. So it's not supposed to like fix the problem. It's supposed to help. Right. So I do go back and forth as far as like trying a medication because, you know, maybe it really could help me, and maybe it really, you know, because you don't know what you don't know. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know how it would be if I was on a medication. It could be amazing for me, and it could help me in so many different ways. So I have been coming up with, you know, I am thinking of going ahead with the assessment and just trying it and seeing, and if it doesn't work out, then I'll just keep doing what I'm doing, you know?
Yeah, makes sense. That makes perfect sense. Yeah. So let me make sure I covered everything. Manage your system, because you told me that as a parent. Oh, I got this. So as a parent and as a self-assessed ADHDer, how do you manage your household? Because that's always fun.
I recently just hired a house cleaner because I am terrible at doing household domestic tasks, because I want to be working my business and I want to be helping people, and I'm like, I can't do this other stuff. Yeah. So I mean, I can, but not to the full extent of being present in it and doing like an excellent job in it. So I just hired a house cleaner and it was way overdue, to come and do a deep cleaning. Best thing I've ever done. I don't know why I waited so long. And because, you know, I love stuff for it to be clean and organized, but I don't love doing it. And so when she came in and she did it, and I was just like, oh, this is just great. I love it so much. So, and that's the thing, is we feel like we have to be like perfect at everything. We feel like we have to do good at all the things. And it's just such a misconception. And so, you know, tapping into the things that are your strengths and not working on the things that are really your weaknesses that you really don't want to be a strength, right? You know, focus on those things that you're passionate about and that you have those strengths on. And that goes for anybody, but especially people with, you know, ADHD, because when you don't do those things, or you're not good at those things and you feel like you should be, you just feel guilty. You feel bad about yourself, and you just, it's just a really yucky feeling. But if you're like, you know what, I'm not good at that, and that's okay, but I'm going to get somebody who is. And maybe you don't hire a house cleaner, like maybe your friend helps you, you know, with the thing that you're not good at, and then you help them with the thing that they're not good at, and you trade those services. So it's all really about like, you know, just figuring out those things, figuring out what you need help with. And it's okay to need help, and it's okay to ask for help, and makes all the difference. Yeah, because girl, my household just a week ago, so but today is looking awesome.
It just makes you feel good, right?
Oh my gosh, feels so good. Yeah. Well, and two, my even my child knows, like, I do better when my room is clean, you know, and she gets it from her mom, where she's not great at that stuff either. And so, you know, once I was, you know, got the house cleaned and everything, like her room started getting a little bit nicer and cleaner. And so, you know, it's helpful too, because you're scattered again, you know, your brain's all over the place. And then if everything's all over the place and everything's scattered, then, you know, you're just kind of staying in that mindset, you know, and in that pace. And so, you know, not to say you have to be good at it, but it is good to, you know, get it addressed or have help and ask for help. Yeah, for sure.
Ask for help. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
for you and your daughter, do you guys talk about ADHD a lot in the household?
I don't know if I would say a lot, but we definitely talk about it. Okay. You know, at first, when she first had it or first diagnosed, it was like, okay, you know, what are we going to do and how are we going to handle this? And now we just look at it differently. Okay. Like I started looking at, I've met amazing people who have ADHD and they're doctors and or other people, and they're just doing these like amazing things and making an amazing impact just in the world. Mm-hmm. And so now ADHD has become a blessing. Like me and her, she loves Marvel, right? And so we talk about how those superheroes, you know, at first they need to figure out how to use that power, right? So they have this power, they don't know how to use it, and they're just a hot mess, and no one likes them, and everybody wants them to go away and not be around them because they're just such a nuisance, right? Mm-hmm. And but then when they can, you know, channel that power and they know how to use it, you know, then those people are like, oh yeah, come help us out. We want you, yeah, we love you. Come on, we don't hate you anymore. Right. And ADHD is kind of the same thing, is when it's a superpower. And once you know, like how to use that superpower, and that's, you know, trial and error, that's successes and failures. That's learning like through that failure and failing forward and just growing through it. Just like those superheroes. And so now, if anything, we really look at it like, wow, ADHD is really cool. And it's just knowing how to use it. And yeah, because I mean, girl plays soccer and she's really good at it. But, you know, that I also contribute to some of that ADHD is like her being a good goalie. You know, she's able to quickly react in that goal. So it's actually quite a blessing and quite a superpower, honestly.
That is very cool. So any last minute, like anything that you want to tell the audience, anything that we missed, any last minute words?
I think you did a great job of, you know, touching on all of it. And I guess I'd like to say, as far as like, you know, when you're a parent and your child, you know, might have ADHD or does have ADHD, you know, it's hard. It's a difficult thing. And really, it's just so important to also give some time to yourself, because sometimes it can be very draining. It can be exhausting. And so you want to make sure that you're taking care of yourself and doing those self-cares so you can show up for your kid. Because when you're just operating on exhaustion and overwhelm, that doesn't roll off good onto your child. And when we have that, we're not able to show up as our best selves or parent as our best selves or parent in the way we want to. So just make sure that you're taking some of that time, you know, you're asking for help. So that way you're able to, you know, better support yourself and then in turn support your child.
I love that. And then if, well, first, do you have any, like, did you use any books or YouTube channels or podcasts that help you through your journey? Anything that you could recommend?
I didn't really use one thing or another. Honestly, my daycare lady was, at the time, was just so knowledgeable about it because her child had ADHD. Okay. So for me, it was just having conversations with other people who their kid had ADHD. I did some trainings that were incredible. I don't remember the name of it, but it really helped me as far as like looking at it in a different aspect and looking at it in the aspect of, you know, the disconnect between the brain. And so I think honestly, just like consuming all those things and having conversations with people where their kid has it, and you know, just learning off each other is just such an important thing and a helpful thing. And it's actually also so nice to like be able to have someone else like understand what you're going through, because sometimes people are like, your kid looks normal. I'm like, well, yeah, it looks normal, but and they have a disability and that doesn't make them any less. But it is nice to be able to like talk to other parents or other people who know about it and, are dealing with it too, to just have that insight and, just that thing in common and be able to learn off each other as well.
Yeah, very cool. And if they have any more questions for you, can you tell them how to reach you?
Oh, absolutely. So you can find me on Facebook as Sarah Lacko or Inspired Vita. I'm on Instagram as Inspired Vita, TikTok as Inspired Vita. I'm still working on TikTok, by the way. Too. I'm trying, but not really hard. Also, you can email me at sarah.inspiredvita.com@gmail.com. But otherwise, yeah, or my blog, Inspired Vita. Everything's Vita. Inspired Vita. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yay, that was great, Sarah. So thank you for sharing your story and your child's story. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate this.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to close it up. So everyone, that closes up another episode of ADHD Love Parent Talk. If you want more content like this, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Do not forget to hit the notification bell, because every time a video comes out, you will be notified. And if you like this video, please hit the like button. All right. Everyone have a wonderful and beautiful day. Bye. Bye, Sarah.
Bye.